can give you another example, which I really like. It's even better from an old British working class 15 years ago melodrama with a beautiful actor, Ewan McGregor, one of his roles before he became a megastar, when he was still playing working class heroes, like Train Spotting, you know. It's called Brushed Off, about miners. But there is a wonderful erotic scene with no dirty words. In any church, I could say those lines. It's, okay, the guy and the girl, they obviously attract each other, so he accompanies her to her house. And down there, she tells him, why don't you come up for a coffee? He says, okay, but it's a problem. I don't like coffee. She answers, no problem, I don't have any. I mean, it's so beautiful. Without any dirty words, it means screw coffee, come and... but what I like is that it's much more, not so much more refined, but even much more erotic than for her simply to say, let's get up, let's go to bed. No? Just, you offer something, you take it back, and the result is not zero. The result is ultra-erotic tension, in a way. That's what we need. Or another example of this double negation, where the result is not zero, is there is a wonderful old anecdote, maybe you know it, about William Randolph Hearst, you know, the big bad guy, the American model of Citizen Kane, media like Murdoch, 70 years ago, Rupert Murdoch. What he, there is again an anecdote about how he had an excellent editor of one of his newspapers, and this editor was a fanatic. For 20 years he didn't take any holiday. So Hearst came to him and told him, please take a holiday, you deserve it. No, the guy said, I'm worried. I'm worried that I'm so engaged in the work here that if I leave the newspaper for a week, everything will collapse, no? And then, this is my reason. This is what I worry. Then Hearst told him, don't worry, everything is so well organized that if you leave, nothing will change, everything will function. Then the guy says, this is what I worry even more about. You will notice that you don't need me, no? That's like, this logic of implications and so on, it's a wonderful way to subvert the ruling doxa ideology, not by directly contesting it, but just by saying the same thing, but somehow taking away the implication. I'm sorry, but I cannot restrain myself from telling you an old story which I already told years ago, but in Warsaw, not here, I think, about how, I think this was the late 70s, early 80s, no, even earlier. It was the relative liberalism of late 60s when I was a young student, and we had a kind of a student newspaper, and there were elections in ex-Yugoslavia. Yugoslav communism was not as harsh as others, so it wasn't that the party candidates, which are the only ones usually, always got 99%. No. In Yugoslavia it was 80%. But you were sure that they will always get 80%. Okay. So this was the night of the elections, the evening. And we wanted to do something provocative. Like, one guy proposed, why don't we do a suicidal gesture? Simply publish an issue, said these elections were not really free, were fake. And then we realized, but this is ridiculous. First, whom are we trying to convince? Everyone knows that they were not, no? So, a colleague of mine, came to an ingenious idea. He said, why don't we just treat them, elections, as what communists in power claim that they are, as free elections, and report the way you would have reported on free elections. So we published an extraordinary issue of our small journal where there were with big letters on the front page, latest results, it looks like communists will probably remain in power. Everybody is waiting for, and it was wonderful. We were immediately called to the Central Committee, but again, it wasn't serious. I mean, not to attack us. Like the guy started to shout at us, why are you messing here, provoking us? And then we played naive idiots. We said, but you claim elections are free, and we just reported that in free elections. And then, so what did we do wrong? It was beautiful. Because that nomenclatura guy, what could he say? No, you know that elections were not really free. So he just repeated, he said, don't fuck with me, boys. You know very well what I mean. What do you mean? Tell us. I really started to sympathize with that guy. He wasn't even, this is how I was always fascinated by these daily ideological practices. So let me add to this another story. Maybe you know it, I'm sorry. This was my almost experience which was crucial for my theoretical development. When I was in the army, we had, I don't know how it was in your army, but okay, you are too young. Do you have now, like in Slovenia, you have a professional? Yeah, okay, so it wasn't when I was young professional. It was, so, you know how it is. After 1-2 weeks in the army, you get that, how is it called, moment when you really become soldier. All soldiers are gathered, you shout this, yes, I swear I give my life, blah, 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 and then you have to sign it. A friend of mine in the army refused to sign it. And he said to the officer, sitting there at the table with this big book of where he looks at it, he asked the officer, is this obligatory or not? Are you ordering me to sign? The officer said, of course not, this is, you commit your life, it's your free decision. Then the guy said, then I will not sign it if it's a free decision. The officer said, no, if you refuse to sign it, you go to prison. So then they fought, and then this friend of mine, it's a historical moment. I have a photocopy of the paper. Ask the officers, I will sign it if you formally order me to sign it. And the officer wrote on the paper, I thereby formally order this person to freely sign the And I'm not trying to sell you this as kind of a totalitarian trick. This is how all ideologies have this moment of where you are given a freedom of choice on condition, of course, that you make the right choice. It's always like this. For example, this brings me to another topic which would be wonderful to go into because there you get ideology. This topic of choices which are given to you on condition that you don't use them. Okay, maybe you even know it, I'm sorry, my classical example. I wonder if you have here the same ritual. Let's say you are rich, I am poor. You invite me to a restaurant. We all know absolutely that you will pay. But in my country at least, it's a ritual that when the bill arrives, for some short time, I have to pretend, no, let me pay. But we know very well that it's just a ritual. And I know it very well, because once when I was young, it happened to me that the other guy said, okay, if you want, you pay. And then it was horrible, because I didn't have the money. I had to pretend, oh my God, and so on. But what I'm saying is that, you see, this gap between saying it explicitly and implications, this is where ideology functions in our daily life. So where are we today? Oh my God, with time, I just began, Let me go a little bit faster, maybe here, so that we don't get lost. One thing I wanted to develop here along these lines is, first, we are, let me return to that ecological example of buying organic food and so on. What makes me so sad is that the logic here, underlying logic, is this narcissistic logic to make you feel good. And it's very sad if you observe the consequences of this logic, for example, in the sphere of sexuality. More and more in the West, even passionate love or even passionate sexual attachment is perceived as something potentially dangerous, in the sense that, you are too exposed, too open, which is why in a typical tendency, more and more in the West, people rely on marriage or dating agencies, and my friend Alain Badiou drew my attention to this. One of these agencies in France made a wonderful play with words which tells the truth. I don't know how it is in Polish, but you know, in English, in French also, we use the word to fall in love.